Social Security and the fight to expand it is a struggle as new as today's headlines. There are ongoing battles both on the right to restrict the program and on the left to make it even stronger. That is a struggle that has been very much a part of the life of our next guest. But as we are about to learn, it is also a struggle that goes back quite a bit in time. Nancy J. Altman is co-director of Social Security Works and is co-author of the recent book of the same name, Social Security Works. She is also the author of a foreword to a new edition of a book which addresses this subject despite having been written in 1795 and 1796. That is the pamphlet by Thomas Paine entitled Agrarian Justice. Nancy, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's such a terrific project and such a great idea, but let's start with this. Why republish a 1796 pamphlet today, and why is that relevant to struggles we're facing right now?
It is completely relevant. When President Roosevelt introduced Social Security to the American people, he said it was not some new or strange values, despite the fact people were calling it socialism and all kinds of things. He said it was a return to values. And and indeed he was as correct as you can be. The Agrarian Justice, as you said, written by one of our founders, one of the people who inspired our independence from Britain and our American Revolution, Thomas Paine, conceived of the idea of a program of old age benefits, of universal, and a program of disability benefits paid for in a very modern way with the estate tax, and wrote about it, as you said, in the 1790s. So this is an idea that goes back to our founding. It's such a part of America's tradition.
And I guess one of the things that I got out of reading both your foreword and Agrarian Justice itself is the idea that these are not just ideas as in, well, I have an idea that I'd like to buy a new car, or at the policy level, I have an idea that I'd like to do an X, Y, or Z plan. These struck me. It struck me, but I'm interested in your thoughts in reading Thomas Paine, that these are ideas based on values which are integrated into the DNA of the founding of the country itself. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. It's from the beginning of humanity, we have all struggled for increased security. For physical security, we have police and militias and so forth. And for economic security, we have insurance. And that's what Social Security is. That's what Thomas Paine was proposing, or in his case, it was these universal guaranteed income. And part of the revolution was to fight against nobility and hierarchy and so forth. And this idea that we're all in it together, as you say, or goes back to our founding and is integral in the whole concept of Social Security, where we all contribute, and then when needed, we all draw out the benefits we've earned.
You also, in your foreword, as well as Paine in the book himself, he proposes an idea, and I don't want to go quite to that idea yet, but he has some ideas we have yet to adopt. For example, payments to young people. But he makes this statement which struck me. He said, "It is the practice of what has unjustly been obtained." It is the practice of what has unjustly obtained the name of civilization to make some provisions for person becoming poor and wretched only at the time they become so. Would it not, even as a matter of economy, be far better to adopt means to prevent their becoming poor? It struck me reading this, even though he wasn't specifically talking about an old age benefit, that might just as well be said of the elderly as well.
Exactly. The President Eisenhower, who was certainly no radical, talked about Social Security as self-help. I mean, this is, again, the idea that what we're doing and what Social Security does is help all of us or provide a vehicle so that we don't become poor. Welfare is necessary as long as we have poverty, but the one of the strengths of Social Security and the proposals that Thomas Paine made that were the forebears of Social Security are that to prevent people from becoming poor in the first place. It just makes common sense that that is the reason that we have insurance. And when we are, all of us, dependent on wages to buy our food and to pay for our lodging and clothes and so forth, we need insurance against the loss of those wages. And that's what Social Security is. It prevents us from falling into poverty if we become disabled and lose wages. If we die leaving young children, we provide a means for them through the Social Security's life insurance. And if we're fortunate enough to live to old age, we have a replacement of our wages that we will never outlive. Savings you can outlive, but you cannot outlive a guaranteed income. You cannot outlive the guaranteed benefits of Social Security.
Well, let's talk about that insurance concept for a second and then circle back to Paine, because to me, this is critical. You hear people say, well, this cohort or this segment or this generation, this segment of this generation or whatever will receive more in benefits than they pay out. Well, isn't that really a distracting argument? Because it seems to me that everyone who's been in a serious car accident, for example, has received more in payouts than they paid, probably, if it's a serious enough accident, than they've paid in premiums. Isn't it really a program based on need rather than, and if you pay into the premiums, aren't you in it? So if you have the need, it's appropriate for you to receive it?
Well, and I think the concept of need is a distraction. It's really, have you qualified because the insured event has occurred. So, for example, you're exactly right. Every form of insurance has redistribution built into it. I own a home and I carry fire insurance, and my house has never burned down. So, am I worse off than someone else whose house is burned down and gets the funds to rebuild it? Of course not. That is the idea of insurance, and it's not this dollar for dollar. It's not savings. It's it's a completely different concept. So the idea is that in Social Security, if you have paid for the requisite amount of time under Social Security, it's 40 quarters, and contributed, and one of the insured events occurs, you reach retirement age, you become permanently and seriously disabled, you die leaving dependents, you then collect. Not everybody collects, but I have a sister who passed away and had paid in at the maximum her whole life, but her children were grown. She died before reaching retirement age. So somehow is that unfair to her? No, of course not. That's what insurance is all about. It is you're paying a small amount on a regular basis to avoid a really huge catastrophic event, and that is old age, where where you're forced into poverty, disability, life insurance, where you're forced into poverty, and that again is the beauty of the wisdom of Tom Paine, that it is.
Yeah, and here's how I want to circle back to Paine, if you'll indulge me for a second.
Sure.
And we're talking with Nancy J. Altman, who has written the foreword to a new edition of Thomas Paine's Agrarian Justice. First of all, I'm glad you corrected me on my use of the word need, because need I did not mean as in needs-based use, but as in you've qualified for the insurance. So when somebody ran a stop sign and hit my car a few years ago, I wasn't asked for an income statement to find out whether I could repair the car myself. I'd paid my insurance. I was entitled to collect on it. Now, but this gets to something Thomas Paine wrote, which speaks to a political debate going on even as we speak in Washington, D.C. And this is quoting Thomas Paine via you, Nancy J. Altman, on Social Security, or he said, quote, "It is proposed that the payments be made to every person, rich or poor. It is best to make it so to prevent invidious distinctions. It is also right that it should be so. Such persons as do not choose to receive it can throw it into the common fund. Now we're hearing talk about means testing that, it seems to get play well in focus groups to say, why should a billionaire get Social Security? Well, why should, Nancy Altman, why should a billionaire get Social Security? What do you and Thomas Paine have to say about that?
Well, you could also say, why should a billionaire get fire insurance payments when he's paid the premiums and his house burned down? He doesn't need the money. Again, this point is that this is a system, and it's very widely. It has these basic ideas, and the important point is this invidious distinction that what was so important to the American Revolution was throwing off this idea of nobility and what I would call, exactly using Paine's words, invidious distinctions. That somehow there's aristocracy and there's monarchy, and somehow those people are better than the workers and so forth. That's antithetical to the American concept that we're all in it together. You don't say, we don't have a military and say, well, it's okay for some people to buy their way out, or at the time when there was a draft. We all are subject to our rights and our responsibilities, and that's the way Social Security works. So that I do believe that the wealthy are not paying enough for their benefits and should pay more. They should pay their fair share. But in terms of being able to draw out the benefits, it flips the program on its head to say you're too successful, you're too wealthy to get Social Security. You get Social Security if you've contributed enough and you've qualified, as you say, you pay your car insurance. They don't ask you, show me your income tax before your income tax return before I pay your benefits. You've paid, you get it. And the same concept is true with Social Security.
Right. And I think if people were really concerned about millionaires or billionaires justly using the Social Security system, they could certainly sign on to the concept of, for example, lifting the payroll tax cap so that they pay more in taxes for their benefits. That would be, and we already have the mechanism in place to do that. It's called the IRS. We're already collecting that data. So it gets so simple and clean. And Nancy Altman, before we leave the topic altogether, in agrarian justice, I was struck by, and I think you had the same reaction to it in your foreword. I was struck by these words when Paine wrote, "Land is the free gift of the Creator and common to the human race. A personal property is the effect of society, and as it is impossible for an individual to acquire personal property without the aid of society, as it is for him to make land originally, separate an individual from society and give him an island or continent to possess, and he cannot acquire personal property. He cannot be rich." In other words, the inspirational author behind the founding of the country all but said, "You didn't build that."
That's right. I mean, it's a wonderful thought experiment to take Bill Gates or anybody else you want and say, you can have any island, any continent that you want. You can even take anything you want with you, and then plunk him down there all by himself. And what is he supposed to do? How is he going to acquire wealth? We, of course, are all interconnected. We're all interdependent. That's what society is. That's really the founding principle, that we are all equal. We're all in it together. We all contribute, and then we all draw out our fair share.
Well, I can't say it any better than that. The book is Agrarian Justice, with a new foreword by Nancy J. Altman. We've been speaking to Nancy Altman.
And I should add, it's available on Amazon for 99 cents.
99 cents. It's a bargain. Thank you for that pitch. And Nancy, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much again for having me. Bye
You
now.
bet. And we will be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.